Hello and welcome to the first episode of our Momentum video series. In this series we're going to be taking you through some of the latest innovations and happenings within digital and technology so that you can take your marketing efforts to the next level and hopefully learn something that will help you. In this first episode we're going to be talking about landing pages and their importance in running successful marketing campaigns, primarily with a focus around paid campaigns where it's really important to make the most of that traffic that you're driving to your website. Now, the first thing I just want to talk about briefly is to make sure we're all talking about the same thing when we talk about landing pages. If you look in the likes of Google Analytics, a landing page is basically any site that somebody, any page on your site that somebody enters on. When I talk about landing pages right now, I'm talking about a dedicated landing page that we're driving campaign traffic to, so a specific page for a specific purpose to support that campaign. Now, when we run these kind of campaigns for clients, I think there's often an initial kind of desire to keep those landing pages within your own website infrastructure. If you've already got a website and you've already got templates that you think will be suitable, it can be more cost effective just to reuse those. What I would say is that when we see clients do that, they typically have a considerably lower conversion rate than they would if you just built a dedicated landing page that's really built for the purpose of your campaign. And when I say a kind of lower conversion rate here, I'm talking about a conversion rate of somewhere between 1 and 3%. Obviously that will vary a lot from campaign to campaign, but that's the typical number that we kind of see when clients are just reusing a template that already exists on their website. Now, if you think about sending traffic from a LinkedIn campaign, for example, you're often paying somewhere around €5 a click. It can be higher, it can be a bit lower depending on your audiences. But if we take that €5 per click and we apply that to a 1 to 3% conversion rate, it effectively means that you're paying somewhere between 160 and €500 per lead that you get through your website. Now, depending on the nature of your company and the products and services that you sell, that might be fine, that might be appropriate, and you might still see a really great ROI off the back of that. However, that is quite a high cost per lead, and if we have better landing pages, we can actually get that cost per lead to be far lower. So, what can we do to lower that cost per lead and improve your conversion rate? There's a few areas, I won't go into a huge amount of detail in this video, but there's a few areas that you can really think about. One of them is making sure that your page is quick. Just having a page take a few seconds to load can result in somebody that has clicked on an advert leaving before they've actually seen your content. So if I see an advert on LinkedIn on my phone, for example, and I click on that, I wait 3, 4, 5 seconds. If I'm not seeing a page at that point, there's a very good chance I'm hitting that back button or closing down the app entirely. You've paid for the click, but you're not getting any benefit from it. So you need to make sure that people are getting to your website and seeing content as quickly as possible. The problem with using an existing website for that is that's your full website. It's loading things for all the pages on your site. It's got excess code and plugins that aren't really needed for that specific landing page, which means it is often a little bit slower. And it's kind of beholden to your website infrastructure. In some cases that's great and you've got a great hosting environment, but for many clients they might not need that kind of performance for their entire site, or it might not have been a consideration when they got that site. Having a dedicated landing page with kind of reliable hosting that's available globally and only has the code loading that is really necessary for that landing page means that your page will load faster and people are more likely to see it and less likely to bounce back off it. Another key thing to consider in terms of a landing page is the layout and structure, and that being optimized for the specific content and campaign that you're focusing on at that time. If you're just using an existing template, there's a good chance that you can make it work. But if you're trying to make it work, then it's not as good a page as it could be if it were kind of designed for that particular purpose in mind. So let's say, for example, there's a new product launching. If that product has a certain number of benefits, you could highlight, let's say you've got 3 benefits, you could highlight in a nice clean benefits section that might not be an existing element for you to use in your own site. And that kind of applies across all those different landing page sections that you might be able to use, is making sure that they're really purpose built to tell the story and communicate the information that you're trying to tell at the time. So in general, like we say, it typically works better to have that page layout designed specific to that piece of content that you're communicating at the time. Related to that is having focused calls to action. If we're driving traffic to a main site, we'll typically have other things going on, like at the top of the landing page, we'll have a main navigation bar, which will let users browse your entire site and go and explore your whole portfolio and things like that. And that can seem like a good idea, but bear in mind that users come to this landing page from a specific campaign with a specific message, and they've chosen to engage with that advert. If you start showing them lots of other things that they can look at, they can become distracted and start browsing instead of just performing the action you want to perform them to perform at that time. So again, it's usually better to be a bit more focused with that call to action, both in terms of what it is, the number of calls to action, and even the placement of that call to action. So it's unlikely, for example, that you'll have very big, bold calls to action within your website templates near the top of the page, whereas that's quite common in a landing page. So when it comes to mobile, it's especially important to make sure that you've got big, bold calls to action at the top, because when we stack down the website into a responsive format, we move all the content into one single column typically, and that means that a form at the top of the page suddenly is still at the top of the page, but in that single column format. Whereas if it's on in the bottom of the page, if the forms are normally located at the bottom of the page, and then you move everything single column, it's even further down the page. Now, if you're looking at your Google Analytics regularly and you're seeing mobile traffic isn't that high for your site, which is often the case in B2B, even though we're seeing mobile traffic become a larger portion of the traffic, it's still far behind where we're at in B2C, where it's well in excess of 50%. In my experience, we're typically seeing B2B mobile traffic down at 30%. However, when we talk about things like social advertising campaigns, we are seeing mobile traffic coming from the likes of LinkedIn being in excess of 70%. So all of a sudden, because of the nature of people using apps and accessing LinkedIn and Twitter and things like that on the phone, it's that much more important that we're driving traffic to a page that's really, really optimized for that specific purpose. So what does that typically do to our conversion rates? Well, we find that when we build a dedicated landing page for a specific piece of content or action, that we'll actually see conversion rates in excess of 10%. Anecdotally, some of those are even higher than 20%. But if we stick with that example of a 10% conversion rate, and sticking with that example again of a €5 cost per lead, that brings our cost per lead down to €50 per lead, which is obviously considerably better than the 160 to €500 cost per lead that we talked about earlier on in the video. What that means is it's actually often a far better investment to put more money into a landing page at the beginning of the project instead of having a higher ad spend. And if you have a limited budget, it's probably better most of the time to take some of that advertising budget and put it towards creating a landing page. And a landing page can be really quick and really efficient to produce. So even if there's factors that make you want to try and use your existing website, whether that's because it's there and you want to save money, or because of practicality reasons, or just because you want to keep everything together, or even because of security reasons, I'd encourage you to look at embracing having dedicated landing pages built in a dedicated tool, whether that's something like Instapage, Lead Pages, or Unbounce, which are dedicated tools specifically for building landing pages, or whether that's using a marketing automation platform such as Marketo or Pardot. It's typically better to go down that route. So I'd really implore you to at least try that, because it just means that your advertising spend is so much more effective, and you'll get a lot more out of it than you would just spending more money on that advertising. What about lead gen forms? I think that's something that we're hearing more and more asked these days, with the likes of LinkedIn and Facebook and things like that, having the option of using lead gen forms within their advertising instead of a landing page. Is that worthwhile? Does that save you some money? And the answer is, in some cases, yes, that can be worth doing. We found recently, for example, that a campaign to a new audience, when we had somebody click on an advert and they were shown a lead gen form within that social advertising platform, they actually converted higher than when they went through to a landing page. But that was only true in this case with a new audience. When we were targeting an engaged audience, somebody already familiar with the company, we found that they were more willing and wanting to explore the company's information, the company's site, and that landing page. And we found a considerably higher conversion rate with that existing audience by sending them to a landing page instead of the lead gen forms. So while they are definitely worth exploring, it doesn't always replace a landing page. So it's really just something you have to try and understand with the customer journey that you're looking to create, and test how your audience react to them. We'll talk about that more in a future video. So thank you for watching. That's everything we're going to cover in this video. I really hope you found it helpful. To keep up to date with more content like this in the world of digital and technology, please make sure you subscribe to the video. If you've got any questions you want to ask or any feedback, feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you and see you next time.